Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for another action-packed Leeds United news show. We have got tons to get into. Of course, we've already talked today about the Strand Larsen thing that came out with David Ornstein. We did a video about that earlier in the day. It was like when it came out, I can't remember exactly the time, but I've been off today from work, so been able to do that. So if you did enjoy that, I'm glad. And if you haven't done and you haven't seen it yet, maybe after this video, whatever, go watch it. But we did talk about that, but there is some updates regarding Strand Larsen from that show that we are going to talk about. Obviously, that is the big breaking story today. But we're also going to get into other stories that we missed out in that show. So we're going to talk all about Perau's potential move to Celtic. And even if it's not Celtic, could he end up going somewhere else? We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about this Jack Harrison sort of situation. Obviously, he's now going to be leaving the football club and going to Fiorentina on loan. This has been sort of in the works now and in the air for a good few days. But finally today, it looks like it's all agreed and he is going to be leaving, which I think is a huge positive. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to sort of dismiss some rumours about sort of Noah Lang and stuff. That there's other stories going around that we're basically going to say a load of nonsense. And we'll also, as well, if we have time, which I think we will do, getting into a bit of a sort of Fulham Leeds United versus Fulham preview as well. So another, like yesterday, another blockbuster show with loads of news. Obviously, yesterday was all about Buonanotte, and we'll sort of talk a bit about him as well. But yeah, as I said, absolutely tons to get into tonight. Get your comments in as always. It's the Friday night show, my favourite show of the week. So let's have a good time. Let's, I've seen some people online sort of today moaning about the Strand Larsen deal. I'm like, oh, give it a rest, will you? So yeah, anyway, but obviously we all have our opinions as well. Scooby says, evening, I'm a Celtic fan, so that's a double result for me, I reckon. Yeah, no, I think that could be quite interesting if he ends up at Celtic. I think, obviously, with Perau, I mean, we'll talk about it later in the show, but I think the sort of 49ers link to Celtic might end up stopping that happening, which is what Gripton's just said, actually. Would the 49ers let Perau go to Celtic with the links to Rangers? Yeah, that's kind of my feeling on it as well. And I think that's sort of been mirrored from what sort of Graham Smith said today as well, obviously in the YEP. So as I said, anyway, we've got loads to get into today. As I said, another blockbuster show. I'm loving these. I love these news shows, by the way, that we've had recently when there's loads of news. Like, so about a few months ago, like, we're doing these shows, obviously we do them every day, and sometimes it's like the news is just so dead, and it's just like, oh, this person said this about Leeds. Whereas at the moment, it's just like chaos, and I absolutely love it. It's good when there's really good topics to talk about, which obviously at this moment. Obviously as well, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I have been plugging that recently, and apologies for the spam sort of updates regarding that. But as I said in the sort of show earlier today, basically when I do it, I just get so much better feedback and the videos do so much better. So like always, because I'm a small channel, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, genuinely really appreciate it. And it really boosts my channel because I'm a smaller channel. I think if I had like Mr. Beast with like 600 million subscribers, don't think it'd matter at all. But because I am smaller, YouTube then is more likely to recommend it. So as I said, please, if you could, that would be brilliant. JJB says, Strand Larsen will be huge for us and DCL up top. I think we could keep us up for definite. Yeah, it's funny actually you say that, JJB, because we were obviously talking on the show around sort of Strand Larsen earlier, and I was saying sort of if we can get him over the line with the addition of Buonanotte, I can't see a world where I'd be surprised at that point if we go down, because I just think there's too much quality in the squad, which is something that I've always wondered if we do have enough quality to stay in the league. But I think you add them two, and I think, which obviously Buonanotte is already at the football club now, and I do think you've got enough quality easily to stay up, especially with the situation we're in now, where we're already 8 points, plus 9 points, obviously, with a goal difference, sort of ahead of West Ham. And of course, they've got a tricky game at Spurs, but they're a bit of a strange. We'll talk about that anyway, all that later on. But I did want to start with the Strand Larsen situation. Well, no wonder the sold Archie then. Yeah, I guess so. But anyway, let's get on to the Strand Larsen thing and sort of talk about a few updates on that, because obviously, as I said, that is the big story today. And the update is that the asking price has sort of come out in today's press later on, and when Ben Jacobs has been talking about it, and he said that the asking price that sort of Wolves are looking at is around about the £14 million mark. Now that is quite high, and we talked about this sort of on the show earlier. But I have felt if this does go ahead and Leeds United do end up signing Strand Larsen in January, in January, we are going to have to understand then that when summer comes around that there is going to be a limited budget to work with, because we are going to probably blast. I mean, you're talking, you say Leeds spend 110 million in the summer, you're basically knocking off maybe 30 to 40 million pounds off that straight away by doing this January edition with the obviously loan with an obligation. So I think that's something we're going to have to bear in mind if we do get the deal, and we might not have the summer that, and I think everyone might go into summer thinking, oh, what a shame. Obviously, we're not going to sign a big striker, but this will be the striker. And essentially, just like we talked about, this is just a case of we were going to do this deal in the summer. It might become available in January. Can we move this timeline forward? And I think obviously that's sort of where we're at with it. The other thing to mention as well, and this is something that is sort of in the back of my head that I'm slightly concerned about, is naturally with Strand Larsen. I think the reason why he's obviously such a good player is, and because he is such a good player, of course there's going to be other interest from other football clubs, and there is interest from other football clubs in Strand Larsen. Nottingham Forest apparently sniffing around. They've been looking at Josh Sargent, I think, and a few other strikers, but they're sniffing around. We know they're looking for a striker in this market. Crystal Palace are also sniffing around as well. And there's quite possibly that obviously Leeds United are maybe the biggest club out of all them three. But the thing that them two clubs in particular have to offer is European football this year, of course. Nottingham Forest, yes, below us in the league at this moment in time. And yes, obviously Crystal Palace, there's a bit of unrest there with Glasner leaving, the captain in Guehi leaving. But they are both playing in Europe. And of course, that will always be an attraction to players. So if sort of Nottingham Forest do sort of put a presentable offer to Strand Larsen, obviously Leeds do as well, I'll be interested at that point to see if which one he decides to go to, because I wouldn't be surprised, unfortunately, if he picks Forest. My only hope with that is that Forest don't really make a move, but that's a bit of a problem potentially in this deal. But in the positive side, if you are going for good footballers, naturally other clubs are going to go for good footballers. And we talk about, as I said, when I've sort of dismissed people who are saying Strand Larsen's not good enough, look, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, of course, 100%. But I think the fact that sort of Nottingham Forest are sniffing, Crystal Palace are sniffing, suggests to me again that what I'm thinking about Strand Larsen and what a lot of you guys are thinking about Strand Larsen, the quality that he could bring this Leeds United team, is there, because there's a reason that other clubs are also looking at Strand Larsen, which again would be why it would be such an important situation and a great sign if we could get it over the line. Something other that I saw as well, which I thought was interesting with this Strand Larsen deal when I was looking into it more, is obviously going into sort of today, we were the betting favourites, but I did notice today actually it became suspended, did the odds, which is natural because obviously David Ornstein's got sort of big exclusive, and naturally obviously the markets have got to react to that. But it's going to be interesting to see when that sort of comes out, what the sort of situation is going to be then, and sort of what sort of odds they're going to give Leeds United, because we know this story almost came from the betting odds, didn't it? I actually think that's probably why David Ornstein chased the story up, in terms of, I think he's probably looked at that, seen the odds have gone down maybe, and then looked into it further, and maybe started asking around obviously with his contacts. So that's the situation. And the final thing that I want to mention regarding sort of the Strand Larsen situation as well is that, have you seen about his, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure you've seen this actually already, but his agent, for anyone who doesn't know, is actually a guy called Tor Peterson, who is actually a massive Leeds United fan, and it's come out. So hopefully, if you are listening, Tor, you're definitely not, if you could, push Strand Larsen towards Leeds United, let's definitely get on board with that. Anyway, let's get into some of your guys' comments regarding this. Larsen will be brilliant, a couple more wins, and I think we're safe. Yeah, I'm sort of in that camp as well, and I think if this weekend goes our way and obviously Spurs lose and we potentially beat Fulham and we can make that gap from 8 points into 11 points with goal difference as well, so almost 12, you are getting to a point then when it becomes insurmountable for West Ham to do it, almost in the situation like where Wolves in, where they're never really going to catch us. So yeah, as I said, the next few weeks, if results go our way, and obviously in the contrary as well, West Ham obviously lose and we get points on the board, we definitely could really start to pull away, seriously pull away, and I think we are doing anyway, in truth. I'm still getting my head around Leeds doing business in January. If Strand Larsen comes in, it'll be buzzing. I'm in Denham drinking. No good, come on. Up to no good, come on. Perau going to Celtic makes no sense. Yeah, let's move on to the Perau situation now. The Perau situation for me, I said on the stream earlier, and I still sort of back this viewpoint. I think if we bring Strand Larsen to the football club, Perau will leave the football club, because I think truthfully, if the board had it all their own way and there wasn't players involved, I think the board would like to move Perau on. I think they would. I think they realise where his stock's at this moment in time, it's quite high. And we also know with Perau that because of the way he is and what type of number 9 he is, he probably doesn't fit the system that well. And he's obviously at the moment 3rd choice striker. But I think if he became 4th choice, then we would end up leaving the football club, because I think the only thing stopping him leaving at this moment is the fact that he doesn't want to leave and he thinks he'll get a chance. But of course, if you put another striker in front of him, and there's 3 strikers in front of him, I do expect Leeds United then to move Perau on, and Perau then to go, all right, fine, I'm now 4th choice, I am going to go and leave the football club. And I think that would be imperative, actually, because in terms of PSR this year, if we could actually get a Perau sale in January, that could be massive for us going forward. It really could, in terms of a PSR standpoint, and would probably maybe even allow us to do another deal in January as well, depending on obviously the structure of this sort of Strand Larsen deal. But that's something definitely to have a look at, because I do think Perau is one that could sort of move in this window. And as I said, I know there's been lots going out about the fact that it won't happen, and the club, they're not that bothered about selling it. They're only saying they're not that bothered about selling him because they know his stance. If his stance changed, I'm telling you, I'm actually quite positive they'd be open to moving sort of Perau on, and I think that would be the best for all outcomes, to be honest. I really do. So you know, that's the sort of situation. And interesting, actually, when I was reading into sort of the Perau situation, I don't think he'll end up going to Celtic, if I'm being honest, because one, it's a loan, and loan does nothing for Leeds United, which is something that Isaac Johnson, who works for Leeds Live, said, that if Perau does leave, it will be a permanent in this sort of window. So that's something to bear in mind. And the other thing is, with the 49ers, I think you guys have said it as well, I don't see the 49ers sanctioning Perau to go to Celtic, personally. Although I don't, even if Celtic are not there, and I think Perau will have loads of interest. We know he's got interest in Holland. We know he's got interest in the Championship. Potentially even, what people mentioned earlier, and I think they're right, potentially even Wolves could be involved in a Wolves deal with obviously Strand Larsen as well. So there's a lot to bear in mind with the Perau situation. As I said, I think it's one that could change at any moment. And I think as soon as Perau decides that he doesn't fancy it anymore and doesn't think he's going to have a chance, then of course I think that the doors will open for him to have an exit from the football club. Anyway, let's get into some of your guys' comments. Apologies, by the way, there's loads of comments tonight, so if I don't read out all your comments, which I obviously try to do, I do apologise. Let's see where I'm. 49ers helping out a rival makes no sense to me. I agree with that. Celtic is false, says Gavin. Yeah, I think that's probably the case. I don't think he's going to have at Celtic. Day says, can I donate your money? You deserve a few quid, actually. Thank you very much, mate. And I believe you can. I think you can do super chats now. I'm not sure. You might have to try it, but I'm pretty sure you can. I'm pretty sure I turned them on. So yeah, I kind of got that sorted in the last few days. So, which is why you'll now see adverts. Apologies for the adverts, by the way, but it gets me like a quid for doing this, which is better than no. So, you know, we have a team spirit unlike West Ham, and that's a massive difference, says Day. Yeah, I agree. I think obviously we'll get on to sort of talking about the Fulham game, and in natural when we talk about the Fulham game, I think it's imperative that we talk about West Ham as well, and sort of how they're getting on against Spurs this weekend. But I do think the culture at this football club at this moment, in terms of the squad and the sort of the way they're all together, I think it's massively helping us in terms of results. Because I still don't think we've got absolutely tons of quality in this team. And I think you hear that even what Daniel Fart, I think Daniel Fart thinks that as well, with sort of what he said and a few of the quotes he said. I don't think we're full of quality, but I do think we've got a really good fighting team spirit at this moment. And that has got to be down to the recruitment in terms of the personnel and the sort of type of personalities that you bring into the football club. And as I keep quoting this, but Baron Cross said on the Square Ball quite recently, one of the main requirements in Daniel Farke's recruitment is all about personalities and bringing in the right characters into the football club. And you see this sort of mentioned by loads of clubs, but I think Leeds United have definitely sort of focused in on that massively. And I think we're now starting to see the dividends in the way that they're playing with each other and the way they're playing together. And you've even heard sort of sound bites from the likes of James Justin, obviously, in his sort of press conference or in his sort of interview, was it last weekend, when he was talking about how easy it's been to transition into this Leeds United team, into the dressing room and get involved in the culture in comparison to other clubs he's been at. And again, I think that sort of speaks volumes into sort of where this dressing room is at this moment in time, and the fact that everyone is on board with each other. And that's a massive positive. It really is. And I think when you look around the league, even with the likes of, we always bring up West Ham when we talk about sort of a bad team spirit and a bad team culture. I think you could even argue Forest is that, and especially with their ownership model. Yes, he's obviously done a lot for good things for the club, obviously Marinakis, but I think he's sort of the way he makes decisions on such impulsive decisions, I don't think that leads to long-term success personally. I think the more sort of almost sit-back approach and much more calm approach will pay dividends long-term. That's how I see that going, but I could be wrong. We have a team spirit unlike, yeah, I've read that one. People are saying this, but Rangers are big rivals of Ross County, says Scooby. I didn't know that, mate, in truth, but I obviously, in terms of going for the division, Celtic, there's Hearts obviously top of the league, aren't they, in the SPL at the moment, but obviously Celtic and Rangers are obviously big options that they could win the league as well. Paqueta spitting his dummy out is good for us anyway. The two striker signings West Ham have made are pony and mediocre. The taxpayers' stadium is half empty, and so does that, and that helps. Yeah, no, I agree. I do agree. I think in terms of West Ham, I think their culture's all over the place. I think, as you said, they've got the Paqueta's apparently not going to be in the squad against Spurs as well. We are jumping ahead a bit on the show here, but and I think they're in a bad moment. I really do. And the strikers, I think that Castellanos looks a bit interesting in terms of, I think he'll offer something in terms of press, and I think off the ball looks pretty good. How consistent he's going to be at scoring goals for them, which is probably obviously one of the reasons he's been brought into the football club. I think we'll have to wait and see on that. If we get Larsen, we won't need to strengthen up top in the summer, says Gipton White. Yeah, I agree, and that's what it is, Gipton. I think if Leeds United, and I think this is interesting actually in terms of Leeds United next summer, and if we do stay in the league, because I think it's obvious now that even if we don't get Strand Larsen in January, Leeds will look at doing a big sort of statement striker signing in the summer. I think that's obvious, even, as I said, even if we don't get Strand Larsen over the line. And I think the fact that we've gone for Strand Larsen, even if we don't get Strand Larsen, is a testament to sort of where the club is, where the Fortiners are going to try to take this club in terms of these more ambitious deals. And that can only be a positive for us, because I've always felt we come up to the Premier League, and at times we don't act like a big club, and we sort of act like we're sort of almost happy to be here a bit, and I feel like we should go in sometimes with more of a different mentality. But I think the 49ers are trying to instill that with deals like Strand Larsen. That's a proper big club signing, that for someone in the position in where we are in the league at this moment. It would be a really, really top sign, and something that would be I think the rest of the league would look at that and be impressed by, if I'm being honest. Day says, good point, Gibton. Do you think we should bring Joffrey back if we carry on playing two up top? That's an interesting point, actually, but I don't think Fark fancies Joffrey, unfortunately, so I don't think that will happen. Feels like a lot has to go right for us to get Jørgen Strand Larsen. For us, it must be a loan with a particular structure. Plus, it's going to be competitive. Hope we can do it, though. Yeah, I agree. Look, obviously, I'm excited, and I think the Strand Larsen thing is really exciting. I said earlier that I think it's probably the most ambitious sign I've seen Leeds United make in a long time, probably in my whole life, actually, in terms of what he is as a player and what he can offer this team. So, but obviously, naturally, there's going to be a lot of competition, and we know we can't just front the sort of 40 million now. In January, I think if we could front the 40 million, I think they probably would, and I think we'd end up with, I think we'd sign Strand Larsen, but the structure of the deal will work against us, no doubt, and it will be a tricky sell in terms of convincing sort of Wolves to do it. Day says, marching on to get all Leeds out week. Yeah, I think Perau, I like Perau, but I don't think he's good enough for the Prem, unfortunately, says Gipton White. Yeah, look, Perau, I rate Perau in terms of his character, and I almost sort of like the fact that he's sort of trying to stay at the football club and sort of working hard in training, clearly trying to take his chance when he gets it. But I just don't think systematically it works in our team. I think we need a sort of strong physical striker up there who's going to hold it up, bring it into play when we play them long balls. And Perau just can't do that because he's not that sort of number 9. And that was never really going to work. I also think his stuff like his pressing, I think, is underratedly bad. People always talk about his hold-up play, but his off-the-ball work, Perau, he's really naff. And that's something that I think is holding him back as well. And I don't ever think that's going to improve, which is the kind of the problem with him, really. JJB says we need some more outgoings, especially if we get Strand Larsen. Yeah, I think there's something in that. I do think there is something in that, to be honest. But, you know, yeah, you're right. I think potentially as well, you've obviously got, in the summer, the season ends about end of May, and you've still got till sort of the end of July, or end of June, should I say, to get some players off the books as well. So there is that to bear in mind. I'm going to have to scroll down a bit, by the way. I'm so far behind chats. Jack says, evening Scott, matching together. Can anyone explain why Guehi has been sold to Man City for 20 million when Liverpool are going to pay 35 in the summer? Because he's now got even less on his contract. Hello, big man, says Aaron. Nice to see you, mate. BMG says, player power probably. No, it's to do with the fact that he's just got 6 months left on his contract, and a player with 6 months left on his contract isn't worth the same as someone with 12 months. Could you do an alternative way of being paid? I gave money on YouTube once, 20 quid. After all the fees, the person got 12 or 13 quid. I don't know, mate, to be honest. I mean, I don't know if I could, I don't know, you could give me my bank details and my sort code and account number, but I don't think that's probably the way to do it. So I'm not sure, mate, in truth. Yeah, probably Gibson White makes sense actually. Day, I like Joffrey, but I think he deserves more of a chance with us. But sadly, Fark doesn't seem to agree. Yeah, he's not Perau. Not Perau. Gerlach won't come back. Perau needs to go, and I will be happy with 8 or 9 million quid. Yeah, I think if we can get somewhere around the sort of £10 million mark for Perau in January, I think that's decent business, if I'm being honest. I do think that's decent business. Anyway, let's move on to the next story, because we've talked a bit about Perau, and I wanted to talk a bit about this Jack Harrison deal, because I've seen a lot of sort of online about this, and I think I've sort of got my thoughts on it. So if anyone doesn't know, Jack Harrison he's confirmed that he's going to go to Fiorentina. It's going to be a loan with an option to buy of £6 million, €7 million. And I think this is probably as good as we were going to get. I think when you look at sort of the stock of Jack Harrison at this moment in time, it's not high at all. He's a player that's played especially badly really recently. He's hardly played at all this season as well. And I think people are expecting any more than what we're probably getting for Jack Harrison. Are probably not judging it fairly. Like, which club really in the right mind? Like, football clubs are not stupid. Which club in the right mind are going to pay sort of more than that? So I think this is fine. I think, look, hopefully he goes there, does really well, and they pay the £6 million fee, and we can get rid of him. That would be ideal. There's quite a strong possibility that doesn't happen. But I think that's going to be a situation we're going to have to hold with Harrison. I think it's also important as well to bear in mind with this that at least we're going to get some wages off the wage bill, because we know Harrison's on silly money at the football club and he hasn't been used. So now basically, worst case scenario, we send Jack Harrison to Fiorentina. They're probably paying 50-60% of his wages. We get Buonanotte, and he was probably on about that price anyway in terms of Jack Harrison's wages, because he's a young player. And we get someone in Buonanotte who's a much better player than Harrison, who we can actually use in the team. And all around, we get a really decent deal. So I think in terms of getting rid of Harrison and bringing Buonanotte in for the same wages, which is probably how this is going to happen, I think this is really good business. I do think it's really good business. I'm really impressed with it, and I think that we've easily got the better player, haven't we? I mean, there's no doubt about. I think even anyone that's been against the Buonanotte deal, I don't think anyone's saying that he's not a better footballer than Jack Harrison. So yeah, I think this is good going. Let's have a look. Larsen and a left wing back will be perfect, says present player. Yeah, no, I agree. I think a left wing back has almost got to be priority. My only thing with the left wing back now, mate, is I think this is probably going to be a summer deal. I don't think they'll do any more in January. I think if we do get Strand Larsen in, I think the amount of the loan fee that we'll probably end up paying for him in the loan with the obligation will be quite high, and I think that will be the rest of our money, to be honest. I'd love to have kept Joffrey, but his second prize was for him to impress on loan, which he's done. He might get about 8 million for him, which isn't bad. Yeah, no, he's another player that could bring in some decent money. Scott, Brian Dean is a Leeds legend. The other night he said he didn't know him. Yeah, sorry, I know he's before my time, I think, mate, but I found out about him since. Harrison's off the wage bill will cover Buonanotte's loan. Yes, it will. What happened to him? Jack Harrison was good under Bielsa. He was. But Bielsa was a miracle worker, Aaron, as well. I think so. You have to bear in mind. Italian clubs are broke. Can't see Fiorentina buying him, but at least we've got his wages off, even if we're paying part of it. That's kind of where I'm at, mate. And I think, as I said, if anyone was expecting any more from the Jack Harrison situation, I almost think you're living in cuckoo land. Like, in what world are you going to negotiate a better deal than that? Like, as I said, these football clubs, they've got loads of scouts. They know what they're doing. They're not daft. Like, they know the level of Jack Harrison, and they know that they're taking a punt on it, which is why they're doing a loan with an option to buy. We were never going to get sort of like a 10 million obligation to buy or anything that people are quoting, because he's on far too much money. And fundamentally, we need to get him off the wage bill, and they know that as well. That was never going to happen. I don't think so. I just think getting him off the wage bill, even if it's half his wages, is not a bad deal regardless. So, you know. Is Buonanotte a possibility for a permanent, or is it just a loan, says Day? It's just a loan at this moment. There was rumours from Beren Cross did sort of fire the idea across that they might look at doing him summer. I disagree with this. I think there is no chance we'll sign Buonanotte. I really don't. I think if he does well at Leeds, the Brighton will just take him back and he'll play in the Brighton team. I actually think there is no way that we'll sign Buonanotte. I also think at his age that he is, he's currently only 21 years old. So if we were looking at signing him in the summer, he's a young kid who's got a lot of Premier League experience. He's going to be far too much money for us. He generally could be demanding like 50 million quid. And I just don't think we're going to pay that. I also just don't think Brighton are going to sell him. I think they look at him, think, go to Leeds, get some more minutes than he would have done at Brighton, and then obviously get back into the first team at Brighton, and then they probably sell him on in a few years' time when he's sort of like 23, 24. I think that's their sort of their exit strategy, really. I don't think it's he's going to end up at Leeds, but I could be wrong, and hopefully he does really well, and sort of Leeds can negotiate a good fee with him in the summer. I just don't see it, though. I think this is definitely a straight loan, and I think obviously the fact that he's got no option to buy in that deal is testament to that, really. Scooby says the James Justin was a waste of money brigade. I've now gone strangely silent. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think we talked about this a while back when we talked about some of the players that we brought in. We talked about this with Perau. We talked about this with Justin as well. And the situations with them two, they weren't wasting money. Just at that point, we actually been quite lucky with injuries, and players had not got injured, which means that then we hadn't needed the backups because the players hadn't been injured. But then you see in a few weeks' time, Bo goes down with injury and Ronan goes down with injury. Bornau has to come in, does a decent job, does what a backup is there to do, that's £4 million, not set the world alight, but just be solid enough. And Justin the same. I think Justin's done actually a bit better than just being a sort of a backup as well. I think he's excelled, actually. I think he's done really well. I think he's better as a right back than a right wing back, if I'm being honest. But I think he's done well. So that was they were the deals, and that's why we did them deals. And that's what we were trying to say months ago before obviously they got the chance in the team. So yeah, I agree with you. We need to beat Fulham on Saturday, put further pressure and distance on West Spam. Everyone's calling West Spam tonight. Lovely to see him. Do you see Harry Gray getting 10 to 15 goals this year now? Not 10 to 15, mate, because he's obviously only got half a season. If he gets 10, he'll have done really, really well. I do think at Rotherham, people are going to think this is mad. I think at Rotherham, I don't think he's going to be starting every single week. He's still only a young kid. He'll be in and out of the team, I think, at Rotherham. We always think that our loan players are going to do better than they do. I think we've seen that all the time. Like Charlie Crew was meant to be this world beater, and he couldn't get into the where was he at? Was he at Rotherham? But he couldn't get into their team, could he? He wasn't at Rotherham. He was at where was he at? Doncaster, and he couldn't get in their team. So as I said, yeah, I think we sometimes overrate our loan players, but that's natural. Dada says, I think Brighton will want to keep him. He's homegrown, which is a bonus, or he will be sold in the summer. Yeah, no, I agree. The reason they wanted to send him on loan in this country was because it made him homegrown. Will says, I've got Leeds to win 5-1. 100 to 1. Good luck with that, mate. If it's 5-1, I'd be absolutely buzzing with that. I'm gutted about that. I'd love to if we got him on a permanent in the summer. Yeah, no, that would have been a good deal. Scooby, just in to a lesser extent, Bornau shows that you can't judge a transfer after 20 games. Same with Gruev, first season. Didn't play until November and ended up being really good. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Buonanotte becomes the next Ben White. Leeds do a massive Brighton a massive favour, but then don't get us to do the favour. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think but we're still getting a benefit out of Buonanotte, because if Buonanotte now comes into the football club, does really well, keeps us in the division, then he's kind of done his job, hasn't he, really? James just in his class as in a back three. He got man of the match at Anfield. Agreed. Doncaster, yeah, you were right. One thing I want to say about Buonanotte is that, because obviously a lot's been made that we sort of wasted the first 6 months by going to Chelsea and not coming to Leeds, and that's a bit of a shame. I actually think a lot of the games where Buonanotte will be most effective in for Leeds United are actually still to come. I think Buonanotte, for what he can bring to this Leeds United team, is not someone that's going to be that important when we're playing away at Newcastle or playing at Anfield or playing in these grounds where it's going to be sort of a dig-in job. I know he actually played quite well against Newcastle, but he's not that sort of a signing for us, really. He's more a signing for when we're playing Burnley at home. It's 0-0 in the 60th minute. We're not creating anything, and he can create a moment of brilliance. And we've still got Wolves to play at home. We've still got Burnley to play at home. We've still got Fulham to play at home. We've still got Brentford to play at home. We've got Brighton to play at home. We've got all these teams at home that might actually come to Ellen Road for a draw, and it might take a sort of Buonanotte moment of magic to open the game up. Obviously, he's not going to play against Brighton, but you get the point. To open the game up, to win us the game, and that is what he's in for. So, well, as I said, it's a bit of a shame that he didn't come early in the season, of course, but I actually think a lot of the games that he'll be effective in and most needed for this Leeds United team are actually still to come. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And as I said, even if he gets us 2 more points this season, it's been worth it. If he turns the Wolves game from a 0-0 into a 1-0 Leeds United win, that's all we need from him, and that's the benefit of Buonanotte. Having that next level of quality is also a huge benefit. Obviously, we've talked about the set pieces that it can offer as well. That's a huge thing, but that's got to be a positive, and that's something we've got to bear in mind with sort of Buonanotte. I think, as I said, where he's going to be needed for Leeds is when we're struggling with creativity, we can't break someone down, and he can either start or come on and offer us something and offer that decisive pass that opens the game up, Pablo Hernandez-esque, that obviously gets us hopefully the win in the game. And that's exactly what he's been brought in to do, because we haven't really got them class creators in the team. And I think he comes in as someone that, as I said, in terms of creative brain, now he can see the game, as I said, almost Pablo-esque. He's that next level of quality, really. I also wanted to touch upon, and I'll get back into the comments, but I also wanted to touch upon Noah Lang as well, because I've seen this rumour going around. I've been asked about it a few times. Noah Lang is not going to come to Leeds United. It's absolute nonsense. It really is. It was reported by, I think, Arca Napoli or something today, but Sports Witness have picked it up as well. It is absolute nonsense. I can tell you categorically why Noah Lang won't come to the football club on 2 reasons. Number one, we've just bought a winger / number 10 in Buonanotte. We're not going to buy another one. And number 2, more importantly, he would never ever come to the football club because of his attitude. Everywhere he's been, he's had attitude problems. He's had sort of these arrogant claims about him. All this, in terms of what we were saying earlier in the video about Leeds United are looking for a certain type of person. He's not that at all, Noah Lang. He never has been. That's the sort of player he is. So Fark and the sort of recruitment team will not go anywhere near Noah Lang. So we can really dead that one. I won't talk about Noah Lang anymore unless we actually end up signing. But there's no way that happens, in my opinion. I really don't think that. Anyway, let's get some back into your guys' comments. Again, apologies. There's loads of comments tonight, so I just can't get through them all. We'll be here till 3 in the morning. Rick says, offer Perau with cash next season on a loan and commitment to buy for Wolves and get a forward to continue this season on cash next session, and we could share work. Nice for both clubs matched on together. Yeah, no, I think something like that is something that we've got to look at, really. You can understand why Buonanotte was tempted by Chelsea. We can't hold it against him. He's been given something to prove too. Yeah, I agree. The only thing I would say is we've got to bear in mind with Buonanotte here, he's using us and we're using him. We want his services and him to play well for us and as I said, turn them 0-0s into 1-0s. But in the same breath, I don't think he sees his long-term future at Leeds. And I also don't think, if I'm being totally honest, that he thinks that Leeds United is the greatest club in the world, like he was on about in his presser, that he said he rang his family and friends after he played against Leeds United with Brighton. I don't believe any of it. I think it's absolute tosh. And I think we saw that when he went to Chelsea in the summer. He was so obsessed with Leeds, he wouldn't have done it, but he wasn't. But he's using Leeds United to benefit his career. But fundamentally, we both benefit, because if he plays well and he benefits his career, that he plays well for us and we get the advantage. And that's kind of what a loan player is in principle. So yeah, that's the situation, Buonanotte, and I think that's something important to know. But you know, it kind of is what it is really with that. We need to pick the bones out of West Ham when they're relegated. I like Fernandes and I like Bowen. The rest they can keep. Yeah, I think Fernandes is a fantastic player. And I think actually he's probably been their player of the season from what I've watched. I think he's a really, really talented footballer. Imagine if we trade Perau plus cash for Larsen and Perau lights up and keeps Wolves in the Prem. I'd be absolutely amazed. I was hoping that Bowen would get sold this month. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're trying not to sell players. I mean, they're desperately trying to keep old Paqueta, who wants out of the football club. Gavin says Bowen is wasting his career just to live in London. Well, he's also got the connections on it to West Ham. He's obviously dating, or is he married to Danny Dyer now, who's obviously massively involved, and Danny Dyer, her dad, is massively involved in the football club. Somerville back? Yeah, potentially. Scott, why would you choose Chelsea loan him if they didn't believe he would sign him in the summer? Scott, why would Chelsea loan him if they didn't believe they were going to sign him in the summer? I don't know. I honestly don't know why. That's one of the life's mysteries, Aaron. I don't actually know why Chelsea loaned Buonanotte. I'm not sure, to be honest. I really am not sure. Somerville back? Yeah, we don't want Cree back, says Gavin. He's still a good player, but yeah, maybe not. I don't think he quite fits our system, to us. Anyway, we're talking a lot here, and we've got to get onto this Fulham preview as well. As I said, it was going to be a blockbuster show today. I actually said it before I did on the stream to my family. I was like, it's going to be an hour, is this? There's just so much to discuss. And I sort of knew the comments would be fine today because there's just so much to talk about. And obviously Friday always is like this anyway. Anyway, let's talk a bit about the Fulham game, because I'm interested to know where you guys are with this. Apologies, I said, and I've said it a few times, but I can't get through all the comments today. There's just so many people. I do apologise. But yeah, let's talk a bit about the Fulham game, shall we? Because this is, look, Leeds United are in a good spot at this moment. We all know that. But I do think when you look at the start of the season, you look at where Leeds United are going to pick the points up in, I always will maintain, when you look at the start of the season, I'm going, Leeds United really, when they're going to get the wins, need to beat the teams who are probably going to finish in the bottom half, especially when we're playing at Ellen Road. And I think at the start of the season, look, Fulham are not in the bottom half at this moment. They're actually in the top half. But we're all looking at Fulham at the start of the year, weren't we, thinking where can beat them. We've also, to bear in mind with Fulham as well, they've got Iwobi missing still, they've got Bassey missing still, and they've got Chuck Ways missing still, who obviously, especially Bassey and Iwobi, start every single week for them, and Chuck Ways, he can come off the bench and obviously impact the game as well. They're still at AFCON because they're playing a third place game, I think, against Egypt on the 17th, which is Sunday, so they won't be back playing. So that has got to be a huge positive for us, because one thing that Bassey offers the Fulham team is a lot of physicality in defence. And I think if he's missing, which obviously he's going to be, is it Quaker or something that comes in? I've pronounced his name completely wrong, but he's the Spanish defender. He's not quite as physical as Bassey, and that should give Leeds United a huge benefit in terms of set pieces, and we know that's a huge strength of us. So, look, I think that this has got to be an opportunity for 3 points. And I know I've seen on Twitter quite a bit today sort of about the fact that a draw might not be a bad result. And as much as I kind of agree with it in terms of just keep the points ticking over, I do think this is a really good option for 3 points. And actually, you look at the games after this, and I think we play Everton away, and then we've got Arsenal at home, and you could realistically lose both them. Everton is not a particularly easy place to go, and Arsenal are the best team in the league. So that could easily happen. And then you don't really want to get 1 point in your next 3. So I actually think this is quite an important game for Leeds United. We obviously came off that bad result against Newcastle, and we don't want another bad result here to start the sort of the worry coming on at Ellen Road. So I think this has got to be a target for a win, in my opinion. I do think that. And obviously with their players out as well, I think that only adds to that. But I do think it's going to be a tricky game, because unfortunately, Fulham are in a position at this moment where they're playing at the best they have all season. Harry Wilson's in the form of his life. They've won 4 of the last 6. They've drawn the other 2. They're unbeaten in 6. So there's a lot to bear in mind with this Fulham game, and it's not a time you really want to be playing Fulham, even though they've got these players missing just because they're so high in confidence. But I do think, and I've watched Fulham quite a bit recently, I do think they are, and this might be, people might disagree with this. When I've watched them, I think they are a bit of a one-man team. I think Jimenez relies massively on service. I don't think he's the player he was a few years ago. Muniz is still injured, of course, as well. I don't really rate that anyone else in the final third attacking. I think that Josh King shows a bit of it, but Smith Rowe hasn't really adapted. And obviously, for me, if you shut down Harry Wilson, I do think you actually stop Fulham at this moment. I really do think that. So for me, you've just got to make sure that you shut down Harry Wilson, stay him out of the game. It's a huge job for Goodmanson that left wing back role and Strout to sort of manage Harry Wilson in the game, because he's in the form of his life. He's got 7 goals and 4 assists this year, ridiculous numbers, and obviously it's typical that Leeds United want him in the summer. It didn't end up happening. But I think if you shut down him, I think we can win this game. I do. I actually think we can win this game. And I think that obviously we've got sort of this physical team at this moment. And I do think when you look through their team, I don't think they're blessed with physicality in the team when I look through it. And I think we can really dominate them on the usual stuff that Leeds United dominate on. We're talking set pieces, we're talking long throws, all these different sort of ways that Leeds United score goals at this moment is obviously a huge benefit for us. We're obviously going to have Buonanotte. You'd expect him to have a little sort of shine off the bench as well, which could be great. I do think as well, though, that this is quite an important game for Perry. Like, Perry's been under quite a lot of stick. He obviously had that, for me, really poor game against Newcastle. Obviously cost us a point in the end with a quite a simple save that he let in the back of the net. So, look, it's an important game for him. He needs to go through a few games now without making any sort of mistakes, because I think there is quite a bit of pressure building on him, and it needs to just calm down a bit. And the way it calms down is by not continuing to make mistakes and getting through this game without making a mistake. So that's massively important, in my opinion. Obviously, other benefits as well. We've got Bogle coming back as well, returning. That's a huge positive. I do think for this particular game, when we're playing that 5-back, especially at home, Bogle's a much better option than the sort of 5-back in terms of his attacking capabilities. And I want us to go up Fulham, if I'm being honest. So Bogle being back, I'd put him straight back in the team. I know Justin as well, but Bogle comes straight back into the team for me. Longstaff obviously is a question as well. I don't think I'd start Longstaff, because I'd want to have that midfield 3 that we're playing at this moment of Ampadu, sort of Stack and Aronson. I think they're playing really well together as a 3. So that would be my 3 in midfield. But I do think we can. I do think we can win the game, and I do think we're in a good position at this moment. And I do think actually it's not a bad matchup if you shut down Harry Wilson, because I do think he's their main threat. And then you look around the league. Obviously, other teams are playing. I believe Forest are playing against Arsenal. Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. I'm more looking at West Ham, but I think they're playing against Arsenal. In fact, I'm sure they're playing against Arsenal. And obviously, West Ham go away to Spurs. The only thing with this West Ham game is that I look at it and go, it would be very Spursy to lose that. Now, I think obviously Spurs are massive favourites this game, and you'd probably expect that they win, but they're in an absolutely awful moment at this moment in time. It's really negative at Spurs at this moment, and if West Ham are sort of winning the game, say 1-0 at half time, that could go sour at Spurs, and it could end up not being the result we're after. So we've just got to do our job as always, and make sure we win our game, because I've got to. If it was another team, if it was like sort of, I don't know, say Newcastle that they were playing away from home, I'd be absolutely convinced that sort of Newcastle would beat West Ham. But with Spurs, they have got a result in them where they could lose to West Ham. El Sacco game, yeah, it is a bit going. I agree with that. I think if Thomas Frank was to lose that game, or even maybe Nuno's to lose that game, I think that could be the end of his tenure. So I have got my eyes wide open to that game, because I do look. We've said this in every game, and truthfully, they haven't picked up any points. Like they said this against Forest, they could have picked up points. We obviously said it against Wolves as well, and they haven't done. But as I said, I wouldn't be that shocked if they got something at Spurs. And what we don't want is any momentum building, because at the moment, West Ham are absolutely crushed. The confidence on the floor. Paqueta's not in the team. It's just an absolute mess. It's awful at Spurs. And we want to, at sort of West Ham and at Spurs, actually, but we want to keep it like that. And we don't want to give them any hope that we can get back into it. So for me, we just need to get our job done tomorrow, win our game, and then realistically, whatever happens with West Ham happens. Because if West Ham were to win, for example, and we win anyway, that would still crush them, because they're just like, well, we've actually won the game, and we're still nowhere closer to obviously catching Leeds. So yeah, I do think tomorrow is a big day for Leeds, because as I said, if we can win, and if Spurs as long as they get something against West Ham, we could make that point obviously just 10 points, or obviously if they win 11 points. And that could be not a turning point, because I think we've had quite a few more turning points, but I do think that could be, we're getting to the sort of nail in the coffin territory at this moment, and we need to do it now. I think we need to get sort of enough points ahead here so we do really sink West Ham. That's what I'm thinking, and just completely relegate them. So that's almost, it's almost like we're a boxer. They're shaking. They've fallen down a few times in the round, and now we just need that killer blow and just completely knock them out and end the fight and end the sort of their chance of survival. And I do think we're getting closer to that. So as I said, if we get a positive result this weekend against Fulham, which I think we can do for all the stuff we've talked about, and they lose, say they lose or they draw, I think you're coming out of it going, yeah, I think we are going to stay in the league. So let's hope that happens, because it could be an influential day. But I'm not writing off Fulham, because they're absolutely in the form of their life at this moment. Gipton says, I think Spurs will roll over West Ham. I hope you're right, mate. That would be fantastic. I mean, I'd argue that even because obviously where we are at this moment, you'd probably take just ending the weekend in the same position we started the weekend. I know it sounds mad, because obviously they've got a much harder game, but we're just getting down these games without them catching us, because they need to, as I said, they're 8 points behind us, so they need big things to happen now. And if we can just completely keep turning these games over without them catching us at all, it's got to be a positive weekend every weekend that happens. So that's something to bear in mind. Don't want this 8-point gap reducing, especially with us at that Greyhound Stadium last game. Yeah, no, I agree. We don't want to go into that West Ham that game needing something on the final day to stay in the league, because they will sell out the 60,000. All their hardcores will be back in the ground, and they'll be firing like hell in that game. We do not want to get to that game. We want to get to that game 4 points ahead at least, and just cruising. That's what we want. And worst case, we get beat in that game and sod it. We're up anyway. Who cares? It's a crucial month, this. If we're 8 or so points clear of the bottom 3 by Feb, we're in a good shape. If we stay up, though, we should have a great chance of staying up for many years. Yeah, we've talked about this loads. And look, if we do stay up this year, and we'll obviously be doing this channel in the summer, and if we're staying in the league, we will be talking positively in the summer, because I think that's a huge window then. Get some real quality in, and you really can build then, and then you sound naturally. Then I always say this: you're not far off Europe. Like, we've seen a lot of teams stay in the league and then in a few seasons' time, like look at Forest, 2 relegation battles, Europe. Look at Villa, relegation battle, mid-table, top in the top in Europe, and that's what Leeds United can do. We can do it with the right recruitment, and you pull yourself away as well. So I agree. The next month's huge because I think the one I've always looked at is we play Sunderland at home, I believe, something like the 3rd or 4th of March. And after that, you're in the last 10 games. And now last 10 games, I believe we've got Sunderland at home, Brighton at home, Wolves at home, Burnley at home, Brentford at home. 5 really winnable games. And even our away games, I think we've got some quite decent ones in there as well. So if we can get to that point with this gap maintained, I do think we should be okay. I do think we should be okay. Who do you say that about... Who do you say that Leeds United player? I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what you mean, mate. Anyway, let's wrap up the show there, people. It's been an absolutely blockbuster day of news. We've talked for about, an hour and well over an hour today, an hour and a quarter, all about Leeds United. As I said, we did talk about Strand Larsen earlier, whole show, about 30-odd minutes on it as well. So if you want to watch that, feel free to go watch it. I still think a lot of what we said is really relevant, and I do think if you enjoyed this, you probably will enjoy that as well. So yeah. Look, that's the sort of situation. But thanks all for watching, as always. As I said, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, it genuinely just pushes the channel to hell. It really helps me. So if you could do that, it will be brilliant. And also as well, if you've just joined, I always say, go back to the start. We've talked for 44 minutes all about Leeds United in the same sort of colloquial mode, I guess. And I think you'll enjoy that as well if you have enjoyed this bit, and I hope you have. But anyway, thanks all for watching. I will be doing a match reaction straight after the game tomorrow, so stay around for that. Hopefully Leeds United are on the right end of it. Let's cheer them on as always. And I will see you tomorrow, everybody, for hopefully us, as I said, reacting to a win. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your Friday evening. Get on the beers if you want, if you drink, or get on the tap waters if you don't. But yeah, enjoy it no matter what. See you later, everybody. Bye for now.